Welcome to the Evolving Past Alzheimer's podcast, where we are focused on bringing you information to help prevent from developing and improve from suffering with brain diseases like Alzheimer's and other dementias. I'm Dr. Nate Bergman, a physician and Chief Scientific Wellness Officer at Kemper Cognitive Wellness, and I'll be your guide on these sound waves. So whether you're a baby boomer who's worried that your brain wiring just isn't working like it once was, or you have a loved one with the disease, or you yourself have already been diagnosed and are wondering, what do I do now? You'll want to listen to this podcast. Each episode, we introduce you to the top doers and thinkers that are revisioning Alzheimer's, dementia, and just generally things in life's second half. If you have questions or comments, check us out on social media. To support us, go to patreon.com/evolvingpast and consider hitting the button and becoming a patron of this show if you find these episodes valuable. That's Patreon, Patreon, patreon.com/evolvingpast. So here we go. Let's get better. Welcome back. In the first episode with Dr. Richard Isaacson, we discussed his journey towards the recent October 2019 publication, which was the first forward-looking design paper showing improvements in people at risk for developing or with early symptoms of Alzheimer's. In the second episode, we discussed Richard's ideas around how mitochondria might be a root cause for Alzheimer's disease. We talk about different personalities of early Alzheimer's and how this might be related to lab levels or cognitive function tests. Other things we discussed towards a personalization of an approach in Alzheimer's are hormone replacement therapy, flavanols, intermittent fasting, ketosis and ketogenic diets, metabolic goals and targets, ideal lab levels, body fat, and quite a bit more. One more note, and this should be obvious, but please understand that none of this should be construed as medical advice. Please consult your local qualified medical authority, even if only considering lifestyle modifications like fasting or any kind of nutritional ketosis. Enjoy the show. I was sitting in a researcher of note, who you and I know at the University of Kansas, and I went there on a mission to find out some stuff about Alzheimer's. This is a great guy, and another New York guy. And he said to me, yeah, Richard's part of the mafia, like the mitochondrial mafia. Meaning there's like this whole mitochondrial theory, right? Everybody knows that, Alzheimer's is not solved. We're learning more and more about it literally every day. First of all, is it true that you are a card-carrying or non-card-carrying member of the mito mafia? And then what is that when it comes to Alzheimer's?
I love that. Someone said that about me. I don't even know who the heck that was. I don't know if it was Russ or I don't know who the heck it was.
Yeah, it was Russ.
Was it Russ?
Yeah, he was saying it, obviously, tongue-in-cheek. He was joking, because he's part of the mafia too, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I could see him coming up with a statement like that. There's only like a handful of people that would ever say that. So I guess what I would say is I've never thought that amyloid causes Alzheimer's. Does amyloid play a role in Alzheimer's? I think so, and sure. Actually, I will quote Russ, and this is Dr. Russell Swerdlow, who's at University of Kansas, and just the man. I mean, his intellect is he's a gifted guy. He's a funny guy too, gifted guy. What he would say is, if you don't take the garbage out, you're going to get sick. And amyloid is the garbage, and it accumulates, and it's the garbage from a bunch of processes, X, Y, and Z. So sure, maybe the amyloid can help a little bit, but it doesn't really attack the underlying cause of why the amyloid got there. So, I'm not going to argue about whether amyloid causes Alzheimer's or, how tau is implicated, because tau is a different protein. And I think we need to still think about, drug treatments for those things, although we've had a lot of failures. I believe that Alzheimer's disease is a mitochondrial disease. Just like my brother's a Parkinson's specialist, I believe there's mitochondrial issues with Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, ALS, frontotemporal, other dementias. I mean, I think that the pathway of badness may be able to be addressed through mitochondrial interventions. I totally believe that. I also believe, and I don't know if I've ever said this on a recording before, so this will be the first time I've said this. I've said this informally, but I believe that Alzheimer's is a medical condition. I don't think it's like a neurological disease. I think Alzheimer's is a medical condition. People can take different roads to Alzheimer's disease. Some may be on the cholesterol route, and they may have an ApoE4 gene. Other people may be on the inflammation route. Other people may be on the, vascular whatever route plus another gene route. So And some may be strictly on the diabetes route, and that's more of like insulin resistance, glucose hypometabolism route. Some may be on multiple roads. Women, for example, they may be in the fast lane because there's something that happens during the perimenopause that causes all sorts of badness for the brain in certain cases. So I believe that Alzheimer's disease is more likely a mitochondrial disorder. And I also believe that it's really a medical condition, and the junk that we see in the brain are the neurological manifestations, or doctors would say end organ damage. Like you have high blood pressure, and end organ means you get kidney failure later.
Mhm.
I believe that's what Alzheimer's is.
So continuum, progressive, because medical condition, I mean, a disease is a medical condition, but meaning it's catchable in an early phase, treatable in early phase until you get to sort of the end stage, the end organ damage being full-blown dementia. Somebody can't be alone anymore. They're unsafe to live alone anymore. Is that what you mean?
Yes, exactly.
So you say with regards to the mitochondria, I mean, are we starting to see ways to assess that at all? Is there any way you can get a whiff of whether or not there's a mitochondrial issue, mitochondrial performance?
I would say we are currently, our tools now are too crude to be able to sufficiently be able to maybe delineate this. And I'm dancing around the question, but I guess what I would say is there are certain people who are in the mitochondrial pathway that I'm convinced that it's a mitochondrial problem. So the ABCs of Alzheimer's prevention management are the mnemonic that I use. A stands for anthropometrics, or body composition. B is for blood-based biomarkers around the areas of cholesterol, inflammation, metabolism, and nutrition, as well as genetics. And then C is cognitive function. So I look at everything, and I'm going to answer this question in context of the A, Bs, and Cs. How can I detect if someone has a mitochondrial disorder? I'm going to first start by just talking to the patient, listening to their clinical history, if they have any other medical problems. This may sound a little weird, but I think there's some sort of mitochondrial phenotype, meaning, I don't know, the look of a patient. It's hard to put into words, but it's like what your gut says, your clinical intuition. But I think you can see.
Yeah.
Again, that sounds weird and squirrely, but I do believe it. So I'll start with the clinical history, looking at a patient, talking to a patient, doing a physical exam. Are there any other mitochondrial disorders in the family, which may or may not have anything to do with Alzheimer's? When it comes to the A's, someone with elevated visceral body fat and increased waist to hip circumference, or if you actually use a body fat scale, bioimpedance or a DEXA or something else, if someone has increased visceral fat, and then you look at the labs and they have insulin resistance, so higher than ideal fasting blood sugar, so anything higher than 95 to 100 or so of fasting blood sugar is, I believe, too high. Fasting insulin should be 5, 6 or less. I don't know, something like that. And hemoglobin A1C should also be, I think, ideally 5.2-ish, 5.3 maybe.
Mhm.
But again, this depends on a whole bunch of things, in which lab, and if the person's red cell life length. And there's a lot of stuff here. But in general, if you elevated visceral body fat, insulin resistance on labs, and then lower than expected memory function on cognitive testing, and we do a ton of computer-based cognitive tests, and there's this, I guess, the phenotype basically of the insulin resistance brain, and that probably has something to do with mitochondrial deficiency. And then how do we intervene? Well, whether it's through intermittent fasting, which generates ketones, because after 12 to 14 hours, your body starts producing a backup fuel. And, the brain uses sugar, glucose, or ketone, which is a fat, as the primary fuel source. And I view sugar and ketone bodies kind of like a hybrid car. So if the gas is the sugar that causes the pollution, the battery of the hybrid car is the ketone body, which is like a cleaner burning fuel. It's an MCT, or medium chain triglyceride. So whether you use, intermittent fasting or time restricted eating, I can get into the details about that, or whether you ingest an MCT, medium chain triglyceride, caprylic triglyceride, for example, has been studied. There are ways to, I believe, address glucose hypometabolism in the brain. And I believe glucose hypometabolism in the brain is caused by a mitochondrial problem. So I guess that's kind of what I would see.
Would you ever prescribe a ketogenic diet, by the way?
I got this question via text today, and I get this question a lot. And I don't know who texted me. It was a 917 number. It wasn't you.
Wasn't
I
me.
have to reply, new phone, who dis, I think, to that number. But I literally got that question today. This is going to be a controversial answer, but I'm going to answer this in the following way. I haven't probably prescribed the ketogenic diet enough in my practice. I've probably recommended the ketogenic diet, I don't know, 5 to 7 times in the last year, which is pretty low compared to how much I think the ketogenic diet should help. That being said, every patient basically that I suspect any sort of mitochondrial anything or someone that has insulin resistance, I am putting on a time restricted eating diet and explaining to them, the differences between fasting and time restricted eating and intermittent fasting and ketosis. So I'm always using ketone therapies using dietary ketosis in almost all my patients. But I'm pro the ketogenic diet for sure. We were just on a paper, in Parkinson's disease, for example. I believe it works for Alzheimer's as well, and probably for prevention. But my problem is I think it works differentially depending on a person's genetics. I'm not 100% sure, but I believe if a person does not have an ApoE4 gene, I think there's some evidence that shows that maybe ketosis may work better. I don't think that's maybe the standard belief, and I think some people would disagree with that. I think people with 2 copies of the ApoE4 gene that have elevated cholesterol in certain ways, depending on LDLP and advanced cardiovascular measures, ApoB, not just your typical LDL and HDL. We look at particle size. I would just want to be a little bit more cautious. We can talk about good fats and bad fats all day, and I'm pro fat. I think fat's good. It's just certain types of fats are bad. I guess what I am a little bit more cautious on is that I don't think the ketogenic diet should be prescribed as like everyone should be on the ketogenic diet.
Right.
I think there's not a one size fits all with that. And I think specifically for ketogenic diet, you have to really follow cholesterol levels, executive function, cognitive testing. Cholesterol that goes up may or may not be a bad thing. And we could argue about that for like a week probably. But when someone's cholesterol is going up on the ketogenic diet, and I do see this in certain patients, and their executive function is coming down, that's when I get worried. So I use cognitive function as a surrogate marker for, is the cholesterol change worrisome or not? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And so if I can oversimplify it,
Sure.
just in case anybody wasn't tracking. So if you're seeing, particularly in genetically high risk individuals like ApoE4 carriers, the cholesterol rise, and you sort of tether that to cognition, you're saying, okay, it might be to your point before, that this is sort of a medical issue that can be treated medically, Alzheimer's or pre-Alzheimer's.
Mhm.
So you're looking at the memory test, so to speak, the cognitive testing, and you're correlating that with the rise in cholesterol, saying, hey, could be that the reason this person is having a problem with cognition is in fact because the cholesterol is high.
Yes, that's part of it. Yeah, and high cholesterol can fast forward towards Alzheimer's. I would say specifically in people with, more so with 2 copies of the ApoE4 gene, but it's hard to generalize. Like I have to look at the entire picture, the entire cardiometabolic picture and cognitive tests and anthropometrics, the body composition, in order to make a better judgment.
A recommendation, right?
Yep.
It's not so simple, right? It's not so simple.
No.
Someday we'll put your brain in an artificial intelligence machine, we'll all be able to do this.
Yes, and I don't think we're that far away. I mean, we're much closer now, but we're a handful of years away to be able to do this in a much easier way.
The other thing you mentioned, I just want to make sure we're all tracking time restricted eating. Can you just explain that briefly and make sure everybody understands time restricted eating and then maybe the advantage of that?
Sure. I think the terms time restricted eating and intermittent fasting get a little bit, I guess, confused sometimes, and they're very similar, but they're also different. So, time restricted eating is when someone will only eat during, for example, an 8-hour time period. So, with me, just as an example, I'll often have a coffee. And if you're having a black coffee, that doesn't count because there's no like carbohydrates or sugar to shut off the ketone process that's been happening overnight. But I'll have a coffee in the early-ish morning hours, 9:30 to 10:30 a.m. ish, and then my first meal will be around 12 or 12:30, and then my ending of food is probably 6:30. Sometimes I'll go later, but I eat within a 6-ish hour window every day. So there's about 18 hours or so that I won't eat. That being said, I oftentimes will have coffee with my Cocovia cocoa flavanols in it. And Cocovia does have some carbs in it. And then I will also put a little milk, which has a few grams of carbs, and a little bit of sugar. I'm one of those. I do use about probably 2 to 3 grams of brown sugar because the bitterness of the dark cocoa is pretty bitter. So on those days that I do add that, I'm still going 16-ish hours without food.
Yeah.
And I do that probably 5 days a week, give or take. So time restricted eating is a way that it's been helpful for my patients because it doesn't just help with I guess the ketosis element and generating ketosis, but it also helps with people with insulin resistance. Like people just shouldn't be eating all day. Like that's just like I don't know. People just shouldn't be eating all day. There's no reason for it. And then 100 years ago, 300 years ago, 10,000 years ago, however many it was, people just didn't eat all day. Like there were no like vending machines and there wasn't fast food. So I think biologically eating 1 or 2 meals a day is probably better. And that would be time restricted eating. Intermittent fasting, again, this is a little bit of some disagreement here, but intermittent fasting, I would say, is like even more so. So last October, a year ago, I just wanted to get my belly fat, which just sometimes gets a little stubborn, and I have trouble getting below 17% body fat. So for me, I needed to like ramp it up a little bit. So 16 hours wasn't doing it. Every other Saturday, I did a 24 to 28 hour fast. To me, a 24 or more hour fast is more intermittent fasting. And to me, that's how I define it. So for me, that helped me jumpstart. I got my body fat down by 1%. I was eating the same amount, doing the same exercise, but intermittent fasting just kind of topped off my fat loss just a little bit more. And I tell this story to patients.
Yeah, I can respond to that. The first time I remember I saw a guy and he was, mid late 50s, struggling with pain, struggling with a lot. He just had a lot of things that were, the 50 somethings that don't take care of themselves. Like he knew how to take care of himself. He just trying to get motivated. And we did our thing with a dietitian, health coach, and didn't seem to help him. He had a friend who worked in medical devices in Silicon Valley who was basically writing a little pamphlet for himself because he had such a benefit to fasting. And he went on like a supervised water fast for like a week.
Yeah.
And then lost a bunch of weight. His pain went away. His hearing got better. All his blood pressure, cholesterol, sleep apnea, all improved. So like just boom. And now the way he maintains it is that he more or less eats what he wants, but he tries to be, conscientious. And then he goes by his waist size. If his waist size goes to a certain, certain pants that he can't fit in, he just goes back and fasts.
Right.
He'll do like a day of fasting. And that's how he controls it. It's working for him.
Yeah. I mean, and certain people really can't do this. For me, like I just kind of don't
Yes.
care about food. Food doesn't do it for me, like ever. And I could do 24 hours unless I'm getting headachy, and that's a whole different discussion. But I don't know, 24 to 28 hour fast really helps me. If I'm like, having my 1 month old and I've only been going to the gym twice a week for the last 4 weeks because I've been, preoccupied, as you know, I may need to start my 28-hour fast again because my belly's getting big.
Right.
Yeah.
So I want to veer off the path of the information that you've published on, because you have said that there are select patients that are coming in, and we all learn a great deal from our patients. I mean, I learn an unbelievable amount from my highly motivated, highly intelligent patients. It's amazing how much information they bring me. But to that end, I think one of the things that we think about a lot, and there's certainly growing data, evidence is maybe too strong a word, but growing data, a little bit of evidence for hormone replacement therapy, particularly for things like the controversial ones, estrogen and testosterone. Where are you at with hormone replacement? Let's start with hormone replacement for women with estrogen.
Sure. Oh boy, great question. So if you would have asked me this question 3 years ago, I would have said, I have no idea.
Okay.
I would have said, the data shows that probably during the perimenopause transition, hormone replacement therapy, and that's all I would say. I wouldn't say how much estrogen, progesterone, type, patch, pill, cream. I would just say that preponderance of evidence suggests that hormone replacement therapy for 5 to 7 years or so around the perimenopause transition is probably protective on brain health outcomes, but maybe longer than 10 years is bad. And then you have to balance the decision between breast cancer risk and everything else. My answer is very different now.
Oh, really?
And my answer is very different. So the women's Alzheimer's movement, which was funded by Maria Shriver, it's funny, they asked me for a quote today, and they support us. They're really been generous supporters, and I'm really indebted to them. Their foundation said, hey, Richard, hey, fundies, what's the one thing that we should share with all of the people that have donated in terms of like what this funding means to you?
Mm-hmm.
And I said something to the effect of, last 3 years ago, I'd say women are at greater risk and we don't know why. And now I'm saying like, you may be at greater risk, but I think I understand why. And I think this issue with perimenopause hormone transition is and fluctuations and loss of estrogen and whatever else is a problem. So based on everything I know about you, based on your blood tests, based on where you are in the perimenopause transition, based on what your brain metabolism looks like, and that's a whole nother thing because we're looking at, women's brain metabolism in our research studies, and most doctors unfortunately can't do that. And this is like very new stuff. I'm going to recommend this customized strategy for you in effort to reduce risk. And I have literally flown to Houston to go on a visit with one of my patients because I'm just like, I am going to go to Houston and I want to learn from the reproductive endocrinologist who's going to be talking to you about your hormone replacement situation because I need to learn how to do this. And what I would say is it starts with a clinical history. What are the symptoms of the perimenopause? Is it sleep? Is it hot flashes? I really want to understand what the symptoms are. I also want to understand, is there vaginal dryness? Like just because someone has, perimenopause, there's a lot of difference there. And, I was there with one of my patients and the OB did a speculum exam and said, oh yeah, look, there's evidence here of loss of estrogen. You need a vaginal estrogen cream. Like I have never thought about things like that. And like for this one woman, like that's all we did with her. And like her estrogen levels corrected, her brain symptoms got a little bit better. She stopped having hot flashes. I mean, like I never thought about things like that.
Yeah.
And then in other women, low dose estrogen patches. It's like, I mean, tiny doses like have done wonders for people. And, what we do is we start one thing at a time. We do like these serial N of one experiments. And basically, depending on the person, we will try more often than not, very low dose estrogen patch, for example, and then recheck the cholesterol, recheck the hormones, and recheck the cognitive tests, specifically based on our computer-based cognitive tests. And we will titrate and make hormone changes based on the whole suite, all of the data that we collect. So I guess what I'm telling you is I believe in targeted, personalized, individualized hormone replacement therapy in a way differently. I believe that a patch and a cream is probably better than a pill. I believe that systemic versus vaginal is important. And I believe in not constant, but reassessments every 3 to 6 months.
Do you do clinical reassessments or do you actually check estradiol levels or estrogen levels?
If you'd asked me this 3 years ago, I would have said hormone levels are, I don't want to say bunk, but just like, I don't know what to do with them. Now I do look at estradiol levels, and in collaboration with a handful of OBGYNs that see eye to eye with me on this, and I've learned from them mostly, getting an estradiol level of around 50, maybe a little higher, is probably a goal. I'm not sure what you do or what you've done or whatever else, but I do tend to follow the estradiol a little bit. I'm not 100% sure that that's correct, but I think that's what we've been doing, and it seems to be working.
Yeah, we're in the same camp, 40 to 80, something like that. Some people would push it to 100, but I'm generally a little more conservative.
Yep.
40 to 80 for sure. How about progesterone? Again, because a lot of these things are useful within the brain as trophic factors, to nutrients for the brain, if you will.
Yeah. So I've just seen too many doctors, I guess, put women on like whatever their favorite thing is, but not do like simple things like maybe we should get a DEXA scan. Maybe we should see your bone density. Maybe we should get X, Y, or Z. Like maybe, oh, you're having hot flashes. Maybe we should also talk about like maybe you should get a pad that makes the bed cooler. Like, I don't know. I think a lot of doctors like just don't have that much time. And so I empathize, and I'm not saying that they're bad doctors. It's just if you have 15 minutes for the patient, like good luck. I don't know how you do that. I spend an hour with every one of my patients.
Right.
I'm pretty sure you do too. And I don't want to say I'm anti-progesterone. I'm just pro like figuring out the problem. And like, I hear from docs like, oh, progesterone's that's what you should use if a person's having trouble sleeping. To me, I don't know. I feel like estrogen is the more protective thing when it comes to brain health. And I think in my N of, meaning how many patients have I seen and tracked, a few dozen women that I've actually tracked this in, I think estrogen is a better way to go. I don't really have a leg to stand on here with evidence, and I don't think there's, the menopause meetings this year were a few months ago, and my colleague Paul was like literally texting me updates from the meeting. He's a reproductive endocrinologist, and like, I mean, he's trying to learn. I'm trying to learn. We're like really trying to learn.
Right. We're all trying to figure it out.
Yeah, but I'm not anti-progesterone. And when it comes to like testosterone in women, I've been, I guess what I would say is more con than pro, but I've also been, open-minded. I also feel that like if you can correct the estrogen issue and then, do some weight training, and maybe I'm wrong, but like I've seen testosterone come up like naturally without using testosterone replacement.
Yeah.
And like, should we even be checking testosterone? I don't know. Should it be total? Should it be free? Which assay? Which lab? I mean, so confusing. I don't know.
Yeah. A lot of problems. Questions about microbes, right? And you just start with viruses. Herpes virus has been in the literature. Do you consider treating with antivirals? How do you check beyond symptoms?
Yeah. And again, if you would have asked me 3 years ago, I would have said, I have no idea. Like herpes, come on.
I'm glad I didn't meet you 3 years ago, Richard. I don't know we had nothing to talk about
Oh
three
man,
years ago.
it's funny if I say this, like when people say, "Oh, have things changed since you started the clinic?" I would say 60% of the things that I do today, I did not know to do when we started the Alzheimer's prevention clinic 7 years ago.
That's amazing.
Like in 2013, patients were getting the shaft. Like I didn't know what to do. I was like trying a couple of little things. Now we have like so many things. I need like 2 hours with a patient. But
Yeah.
there's something to the microbe story. Yeah, I'm going to say that. I'm going to say, is it the virus? Is it the cascade? Is it, the inflammation that comes with the virus? Is it the actual virus itself? Does herpes cause Alzheimer's? I mean, I guess what I would say is in susceptible individuals, I believe, and this is not based on data, and this is not based on me like, I've read 5 to 7 or more studies about herpes and Alzheimer's, but I haven't read 100.
Mhm.
I believe that the concept here is epigenetics. So, epigenetics means to me the interaction between a person's environment and their genes. And I believe some people that get hit with herpes, possibly more people that are like ApoE4 positive, but I don't. That's what I may have seen clinically, but I'm not sure. Maybe something else. There's some other gene or something or some susceptibility with an immunity where herpes virus, is it type 1 oral, type 2 genital? This gets very confusing. But what I will say is the following. Have I ever prescribed valacyclovir, which may have better CNS penetration? Have I? Hey, this is being recorded. Oh, well, yes, a handful of times, less than 10 times. Usually the primary care doctor will do it. Oftentimes the person would have been taking it for prophylaxis anyway, so maybe I'll refill a prescription. But we're not talking like I do this in everybody, like not even close. And this is off label, but it's always in someone that either has amyloid in their brain, and I want to do like anything and everything as long as it's safe. And valacyclovir is not going to hurt anyone, especially at the lower doses that I use.
Mhm.
But I guess what I would say is I have utilized it. The other thing that I really hate talking about because we haven't published anything yet, but I guess what I'd say is I get to look at a lot of data before it gets published. And what I would say is there is a group of women and a few men. More we've imaged like twice as many women. So I guess I've just seen more women, but I think the same holds true in men.
Yeah, that's right.
We have imaged lots of women, and there's like a group of women that have had herpes simplex 2, so genital herpes, and have been on antiviral prophylaxis for herpes to minimize outbreaks. And I guess what I would say is we have, I think, 3 of the women in the study have amyloid in their brain, but they've been taking antiviral drugs, but their cognitive function is like totally normal.
Interesting.
So I don't know if this will hold up. I don't know if this is just an artifact and, we need to image 100 more women. This will just be diluted. But I would say my gut is saying there's maybe some protective effect of antivirals in people with amyloid, but I'm not sure. There's also a study being done at Columbia. Really nice guy. He's using 4 grams of valacyclovir with mild to moderate Alzheimer's, and it's a long study. It's an NIH-funded study, and they've recruited like, I don't know, a third or so of the patients. So it's going to be a while till the study reports. But we're going to know better if it helps with mild dementia. If it helps for prevention, I don't know.
Yeah, find out. Richard, thank you for being so generous with your time. And just in the last couple of minutes here, you did something that was amazing. I want you to tell everybody about All's You. and sort of what it means for clinicians, what it means for individuals that are not, doctors or nurse practitioners or things like that, kind of what it's about and how they can benefit from it.
Yes. The mission of our clinic to help and to reach as many people as possible at risk for Alzheimer's while advancing Alzheimer's prevention research. So the latter, advancing Alzheimer's prevention research, we've really done that using this clinical trial that we published. And I appreciate you for spreading the message, because part of the thing is to help and to reach as many people as possible. So podcasts like this can really do that. But, we have a waiting list in the clinic that's just like, it's impossible. And I feel terrible, but like we're like in the middle of Manhattan. And, aside from my 510 square foot apartment with 6 living beings in it, my clinic in New York, like we're out of space. Like we literally like have no room to like sit, sort of thing. So I can't like scale the clinic to see like hundreds of patients because we just don't have enough space. It's like it's sad, but it's just the reality. So what we did is we tried, every time we learned something new about Alzheimer's prevention, we actually created an online course, a free online course at a website called Alzheimer's Universe, or alzu.org. It's completely free. We launched the initial course in 2014, built it in 2013, and launched in 2014. We did a complete refresh of everything and then expanded it in 2018. And then in 2019, we added 2 more lessons, one about ApoE. And then in 2019, also, we added a course for high school students, college students, medical students, and neurology trainees. And then right at the tail end of 2018, early 2019, we also added a CME accredited course. So doctors need to renew their licenses or whatever. You need to take these continuing education credits. So we also have another course for physicians to get CME credit. And there's 7 lessons and 3 live patient videos that you can actually see me seeing a patient. Me and Holly, our nurse practitioner, I think, is there. And we basically recorded everything to see everything. So Alzheimer's Universe is really a free site to teach the public. There's the course on prevention for the public. And then there's 5 other courses for, again, high school students, college students, medical students, whatever. 6 courses for the public. And we've had over 1.5 million people that have taken any degree of the courses since 2014, which is like amazing. Our goal was 1 million people in 5 years. And, at 6 years, we're at 1.5 million. So we're doing really well. And it's totally free. It's like that Facebook saying, it's free and will always be free. We did it through donations and philanthropy. We've gotten a few grants to help it out.
Awesome.
So if someone wants to learn about Alzheimer's and like either take a deep dive or take a shallower dive or whatever, there is a course for you. And the fun part is for college and high school students and medical students, Seth Rogen, we enlisted him to teach the classes, and that's been funny and a blast, and that increased our reach. And there's just like way too many people out there that just have no conception that you can grab the bull by the horns and like take control of your brain health like right now. And listening to this podcast is a great start. And reading a book, that fine, you buy a book, great. But online, anyone can reach it and it's free. So hopefully people take advantage of it and share it with your friends. It's just a really important, balanced, evidence-based, and a careful and peer-reviewed resource.
Richard, it's a pleasure and honor to know you and have you on. I appreciate, again, your general work and then your time here and now your friendship, and hope to stay in touch.
Awesome. Thanks. Bye.
So that's our episode. I hope it was useful to you. Check out the show notes on iTunes or on our website where we've summarized the key points. If you find the information here valuable, please consider giving us a 5-star rating on iTunes and leaving comments in the comments section. It will really help us bring this message to as many people as we can. If you have questions or comments, connect with us on social media. Finally, to support us, go to patreon.com/evolvingpast and consider hitting the button and becoming a patron of this show. That's Patreon, Patreon, patreon.com/evolvingpast. Thanks, and talk to you next time.